Hello there, I'm Robert McKay. You are watching one of my videos on my channel, Christianity on the Bottom Shelf. And I want to jump right into the Bible, and then I'll explain why I'm reading what I'm reading. This is the book of John, chapter 19. And I'll read from 38 through 42, which will finish the chapter. Now after these things, the crucifixion, Joseph of Arimathea, being a disciple of Jesus, but secretly because of his fear of the Jews, asked Pilate that he might take away the body of Jesus, and Pilate granted permission. So he came and took away his body. And Nicodemus, who had first come to him by night, also came, bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes, weighing about 100 litras. I don't know what a litra is, an ancient measurement. So they took the body of Jesus and bound it in linen wrappings with the spices, as is the burial custom of the Jews. Now in the place where he was crucified there was a garden, and in the garden a new tomb in which no one had yet been laid. Therefore, because of the Jewish day of preparation, since the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there. I was at work today. Let me back up. I'm recording this on Friday night, and the reason I mention that is that I was at work today, and realizing that it's Good Friday, I thought of S.M. Lockridge's sermon, "It's Friday, but Sunday's coming." And you can find it, or at least snippets of it, on YouTube. I'm not going to attempt to re-preach the sermon, especially not here. These videos aren't long enough, even when I go over my time. But this being Good Friday of 2026, it occurred to me, it occurred to me that it would be good for me to say to y'all who, at least if you're in my target audience, don't know a lot about Christianity, I wanted to say to you, it's Friday night, but Sunday's a-coming. Some might ask, I at one time asked, excuse me, I've got something in my throat apparently. One time I asked, and you may ask, what is so good about Good Friday? Now, I'm not claiming that if you go back year after year after year, you will find that today is exactly however many years since the crucifixion of Jesus. But on this day, we at least remember that after Judas Iscariot betrayed him to the Romans, or to the Jews and the Romans, and the Jews and the Jewish leaders had incited the Romans to crucify Jesus because under Roman rule, the Jews could sentence someone to death, but only the Romans could carry it out. After all that, after a mock trial, after torture, after mockery, they led Jesus out to the hill. I'm sorry, my throat just keeps catching on something, I don't know what. They led him out to the hill, which, depending on the language, was Golgotha or Calvary. I think Golgotha's Aramaic, I'm not sure. I didn't look this up. Calvary comes from Latin. And they crucified him. One of the physically most awful means of execution anyone has ever devised. You probably can find it online. There is a document that a medical doctor wrote up who looked into crucifixion, and he described in detail that made me sick to my stomach. I have a weak stomach, granted. Exactly what physical damage and torture Jesus endured on the cross. It's awful. He hung on the cross. He died pretty quickly. It was possible for a crucifixion victim to live sometimes for several days in constant agony from the wounds, finding it harder and harder and harder to breathe, suffering serious thirst, fever, various things. By the time one of those people died, he probably was glad he died. Jesus died. They took him down from the cross, and we read how they buried him. Now put yourself in the shoes of his disciples, not just the 12, well, the 11 now. Judas Iscariot had made his traitorous break with Jesus and his followers. Not just those apostles, as they later came to be, but all those who had followed him. His mother, apparently by then Joseph was dead. The Bible doesn't say, but he doesn't appear in this. And John took Mary, Jesus' mother, into his own household, indicating that Joseph was no longer there to care for her. But Mary was there, friends, followers, people who had seen him perform miracles and no doubt wondered why he hadn't performed one now. He himself had said, when the mob came to capture him, that he could call 12 legions of angels, thousands of angels, to defend himself or to defend him. And of course, he was God the Son. With a word, with a mere act of his will, he could have wiped out all his opponents, but he didn't. He endured arrest, he endured a kangaroo court, he endured torture, he endured crucifixion, he endured death. They laid him in that tomb, and it was over. At least it seemed that way. It was Friday night. What we know today, but his disciples didn't recognize, was Sunday was a-comin'. Tonight is Friday night. Tonight we remember that Jesus lay in the tomb, dead, genuinely dead. You can never convince me that Jesus somehow survived. Those Roman soldiers were experts in putting people to death. If he had not been dead, they would have known it. When that spear ran into his side, out came blood and water, indicating that he was dead. The red blood cells had separated from the plasma, the serum, and so he was dead. And even if he hadn't been, there was no way that he could have survived in the tomb with no water, no food, sealed in with a rock weighing hundreds, if not thousands of pounds. He was dead. We remember that tonight. Then comes tomorrow, Saturday. Now, I'm going to upload this on Sunday, but I'm recording it Friday. Keep that in mind. Tomorrow's Saturday, and he's still in the tomb. And then early Sunday morning, the stone rolls away, and Jesus got up and walked out of that grave alive. There's a song several years old now by Don Francisco, if I remember his name right. And I have to be honest, I don't listen to a lot of Christian music simply because so much of it is either badly out of kilter on doctrine, or it's just musically bland and it's pablum. But this one I like. And this song says, He's alive. He's alive. He's alive and I'm forgiven. Heaven's gates are opened wide. Tonight, as I sit here recording, Jesus is dead. Tomorrow, Saturday, when I'm at work, Jesus will be dead. When I go to bed tomorrow night, Jesus will be dead. Sunday morning, he will rise from the dead. He will defeat death. Normally, when my allergies kick in, it's my nose, but my eye was itching. No doubt allergies are responsible for my throat, too. Joseph Smith stayed dead. Muhammad is still dead. The Bab and Baha'u'llah are still dead. Charles Taze Russell is dead. Name a founder of a religion. I'm going to mispronounce this, but Siddhartha Gautama, the founder of Buddhism, is dead. I can't remember the name of the man who founded Sikhism. He's dead. Jesus was dead, but he's not dead now. He rose from the dead, and this is provable historical fact to the extent that any historical fact from that age is provable. Some will say, well, it's the Bible that says it. Find me a more reliable book from that time period. Go ahead, I'll wait. And I'll wait a long time. Other books have at most a few hundred manuscripts attesting to the text. And most of those manuscripts, hundreds and hundreds of years after the original composition. The New Testament alone has over 5,000 manuscripts and fragments of manuscripts, some of them dating back to within 100 years or so of the actual events, so that at the time of their writing, if the eyewitnesses were not still alive, those the eyewitnesses personally spoke to were. And for all we know, some of those fragments are from the lifetime of the apostles. It may be that we have in our possession somewhere around the world the handwriting of Matthew or John or Paul. How would we know it if we did? There are those who say, well, we don't have what they actually wrote. We don't have their handwriting. How do you know? We might, and none of us would ever know it. How do we identify Paul's handwriting? We don't have a sample. The New Testament has more witnesses to the text than any other ancient document by a factor of several. Hundreds, and then the Bible with thousands. A fact, at least 10 times more witnesses to the text of the New Testament than any other ancient book. And these are eyewitnesses. John was an eyewitness. Matthew and Luke, I take it back. Matthew was an eyewitness. Luke had a very scientific mind. He was a doctor. Granted, medicine was not where it is today. But he did sound historical research. He interviewed eyewitnesses. He looked at the relevant documents. He presented a valid historical treatise. Mark, we don't know as much about, but he was a companion of Peter, who was an eyewitness. Mark got his information firsthand. The book of Hebrews says, we learned our doctrine from those who were there. So you cannot dismiss the Bible simply because it is a religious book. It is an ancient book which we can look at using the same tools we would use to look at any other ancient book. And when we do that, it's the most reliable by far. If you're going to accept other books from that same time period as let me back up a step. If you're going to accept that we have the actual text of other books from that period, unmutilated, uncorrupted, because we have a few hundred witnesses at most, then you cannot consistently reject the Bible because we have even more evidence for it, for its accuracy, for its reliability. And so, when the Bible says Jesus died on Friday, they didn't call it Friday then. Whatever they called it, they did not call it after the name of a pagan goddess, a Norse or Germanic goddess, which is where Friday comes from. But Jesus died on Friday, was in the tomb Friday night, all day Saturday, rose again on Sunday. And by our calendar, maybe it wasn't Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Big, fat, hairy deal. He died, and he was buried, and he rose again, and he lives forever to make intercession for his people. I'm recording this on Friday night. I'm recording this when Jesus is dead. But Sunday is a coming. Jesus is going to walk out of that grave, and that is the one historical fact that changes everything. George Washington crossing the Delaware changed some things, but not the whole world and all of history. When Jesus rose from the dead, it changed everything. And now the question is, what are you going to do with this fact? Because it is a fact. Are you going to mock and reject, and are you going to be so anti-historical that you refuse to accept the most accurate and reliable ancient document in the world, just because it's Christian? Or are you going to do the rational thing, the sensible thing, and believe what it says? There's a place in one of the Gospels, there's a man born blind, and a lot of people refused to believe that Jesus had given him perfect eyesight, because they said, in all the history of the world, nobody's ever heard of a cure for a man born blind. Are you going to be that way? There was a time when nobody had ever undergone a heart transplant, and now it's fairly routine as any such major procedure can be. Just because we've always done it this way doesn't make that the only right way. There might be a better way. The fact that no one ever rose from the dead before Jesus, and I don't mean some human agency raised him, that had happened. Jesus rose from the dead without any human intervention whatsoever. The fact that it never happened doesn't mean that it didn't happen. All it means is that it's unprecedented, it's a miracle, divine power at work. So that is not a valid excuse. You can either accept the testimony of eyewitnesses who died for this fact, who refused to recant, even at the point of a sword. And remember, people don't go to their death willingly for what they know is a lie. Paul wrote about 500 brethren who at one time saw the risen Christ. And if there were 500 men, there were probably also 500 women, and who knows how many children there. And most of them were still alive when he wrote that. And if he was lying, if he was making it up, they would have laughed him out of the church, and the church would have fallen apart. And yet here the church is 2,000 years later. Are you going to reject that kind of authority? Or are you going to be rational and accept the truth, accept that Jesus really did rise from the dead, and govern yourself according to that fact? It's your choice. I'm already at 23 minutes and counting, so I'm not going to go into everything that follows from which choice you make. But I will say this: reject the truth and die forever. Accept the truth and live forever. Those are the alternatives. It's on you now. How will you decide?